Hello, our beautiful parishioners. Welcome back to another episode of the Drunk Bible Study bonus episode?
Yes.
Yeah, another bonus
for episode 52.
Yeah, wow, 52 episodes. That means an entire year if you've been listening every week, which hopefully you've been binging and just going like nuts.
Just going nuts on
yeah,
this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you haven't, if you've been really like, taking your time and doing it every week, then welcome to 1 year of us. Anyways, we're going to talk about a couple things, some kind of Debbie Downer things a little bit. I guess I can start off with my Debbie Downer.
Yeah,
let's get the Debbie Downer out of the way.
Yeah.
And then we can
Okay.
end on a happier note.
Yeah, we're going to talk about stoning real quick. We're going to talk about methods of execution in the Bible, just simply because we were a little bit curious of this. I didn't realize, but yeah, it's just basically the method of capital punishment that happens most often in the Bible, and it seems like it usually happens in the section of the Bible that is, I guess, the Torah, which is the first 5 books, right? Is what you all said?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So it's a lot. It's in there a lot, but I didn't realize. So the Talmud?
Talmud.
Just
Talmud.
Talmud. Okay,
Yes.
what is the Talmud? Explain this to me.
The Talmud is basically like writings after the Torah, but like writings kind of like clarifying and codifying the rules.
Okay.
That's a terribly oversimplified way to explain it, but that's the basic gist.
Well, this document or thing, or is it a book? Is it a document?
I'm sure it's been made into a book, but
Okay,
it was,
yeah.
At the time, like writings weren't in book form.
Sure.
All of this wasn't really book form originally.
No, I guess that's true. Well, okay. Well, that describes 4 methods of execution, actually. So you were talking like, do they have a guillotine sort of thing? And I have no idea. But apparently, beheading is one of the ways that one can be executed.
That's an option.
Okay.
Also strangulation, so potentially not like hanging,
guess?
but it just says strangulation. And then stoning, of course, our old favorite. And then this one is particularly gruesome. Pouring molten lead down the throat of the condemned person.
Whoa.
Jeez.
Yeah. That's an exciting one.
That's yikes.
Yeah, but this talks about the list of persons who should be stoned. I'm wondering if, like, this just says to the following sinners stoning applies. And it has a lot of, like, normal ones. Most of them are to do with adultery of some sort. So it's like one who had relations with his mother.
Okay.
So Hamlet, no, I mean, not that Hamlet ever did, but he thought about it for sure. With his father's wife. So
Okay.
also his mother, or I guess his stepmother.
Yeah,
Stepmom.
stepmother.
Yeah.
Okay, with his daughter-in-law, a human male with a human male. Very sad. That is the thing. Or with cattle.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
And the same is the case with a woman who uncovers herself before cattle.
So also a woman who has sex with cattle.
Okay.
I think that's,
And that you've
I
had
think
sex
that's
with her, too?
No,
okay.
I interpret that as any woman who's had sex with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with a blasphemer, which we've talked about today,
Yes. Someone
yeah.
who curses.
an
Yeah.
idolater.
What's that mean?
Yeah, like someone who worships idols,
Yes.
I guess.
Okay.
Someone who's too into American Idol.
Yes.
Gotta stone
for sure.
them. Yeah.
Okay. He who sacrifices one of his children to Molech.
Yeah, we
Yep.
covered that before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. One that occupies himself with familiar spirits. What does that mean?
That was kind of also with the sorcery and wizards.
Okay.
and-
Well, we're going to get more into that.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
A wizard.
Just,
okay.
Just
period.
a wizard.
Just
Okay.
period
Full
wizards.
stop.
Right.
Okay.
Harry Potter.
Look at this. Listen to
Stoned.
this. One who violates Sabbath.
Yes.
Yikes. What if you accidentally, like, do a little bit of work? Like,
yeah.
if you're just, like, going along your day and are like, oh, yeah, I forgot to do that thing over here. I'm going to sow this field somehow. And then
I'm just
they're
gonna
like,
accidentally sow this field.
yeah, I don't know.
I lost track of the days. I thought,
Yeah.
like...
To be fair, though, but think about it, though. I think it would be hard to lose track because it's
Yeah.
like if everyone's
Everyone else,
observing
yeah,
Sabbath,
that's
it'd be
true.
really hard for you to just slip up and be like, oh, I accidentally
I suppose you're right.
was out in the fields.
But yikes, I mean, that's a big deal for that. Okay, so one who curses his father or mother. Wow. Okay, one who has assaulted a betrothed damsel.
Oh.
Damsel.
Yes,
Okay.
a betrothed damsel.
Oh boy.
So-
Boy, yeah, okay.
Oh, this is interesting. A seducer who has seduced men to worship idols. And the one who misleads a whole town. A whole town. Okay. And then it says a witch, male or female. What's the difference between a witch and a wizard?
I feel like it really depends where your definitions come from.
Well, this is in the same book. And then finally, a stubborn and rebellious son.
Yeah, that one's just like every son's dead. That's
Yeah,
it.
seriously,
Like,
every teenager.
every
Yeah,
teenager
they go.
stoned to death.
Yeah,
Yep.
wow. Okay. Yeah, so basically, this says, as God alone was deemed to be the only arbiter in the use of capital punishment, not fallible people. This says the Sanhedrin, or Sanhedrin?
The
I don't know.
Sanhedrin.
Oh, thanks.
I am not familiar with that.
So it's kind of like the judge, the judicial body.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
that-
the
is that-
Sanhedrin.
I'm gonna ask you, is that right?
It is the sitting together, hence assembly or council, assemblies of either 23 or 71 rabbis appointed
It's
to
just a
sit as a
tribunal.
tribunal in every
Yes,
city.
The Sanhedrin. Yes. Okay.
Cool. Okay, so yes, the Sanhedrin made stoning a hypothetical upper limit on the severity of punishment. Okay.
Yes.
So maybe like stoning applies to all these people, but it is if they're a first offender in some of these cases, like if they're rebellious the first time as a son, then maybe they're not going to do
Okay.
that. But anyways, yeah, some of these
Wow,
are kind of
yeah.
interesting, but now we know.
The whole thing's sad and upsetting, though. So, do we got anything happier to talk about? Like jubilees?
Jubilee.
Jubilee. What a funny subject to
Well-
research. Jubilee.
Can I quickly just make a little aside? So I was at work today and someone asked me, they were like, this gluten-free pasta is super good. Do you make it in-house? And I was like, we don't know. And she's like, can you go and check the brand? And I looked and the brand was Jubilee.
Oh,
There you
meant to
go.
be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
Beautiful.
It was. And so I said that. I was like, it's Jubilee. And they were like, wow, I love that. I love that name. So here we are.
And now if they come back, you'll be like, also, let me tell you about the origins of jubilee.
All right. Well,
Well-
please tell me, please.
I will teach you. So it comes from the word jobel, which
Like
means
Job.
no, it means a ram's horn.
Jobel.
oh.
Depressing. A
A
ram's horn.
Okay.
Yes.
Which is the thing that you go around blowing.
Yes, the loud ass trumpet that you go around blowing
Yeah.
when it's Jubilee.
I've got the conch piggy.
So yeah.
Oh my
yeah,
gosh, really?
like
Are we
that.
going to make this
Yeah.
What?
the Lord of the Flies
Yeah,
thing?
something like
Okay.
that. Well, here's the thing: is in researching Jubilee, and again, this is like very surface level research.
Okay.
There's
Isn't all the research we do pretty surface level
yes,
on this
yes.
show?
Correct.
there's a lot of time and energy and effort that's been put into people trying to figure out, was Jubilee supposed to be on the 50th year or the 49th year?
Yeah.
man.
And
I
such
read
and
some
such rabbit
similar
over here
stuff.
thinks for sure it's the 50th year, but then such and such rabbit over here is like, no, it's definitely the 49th year. But then, like, in
Yikes.
this tradition, this text says it's probably the 50th year. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of energy going into figuring out which year is Jubilee supposed to be on.
I came across similar stuff in looking up things about the Sabbath year, where it's this thing of like, does that 50th year count toward the next 7, or is it an extra year
Yes.
on top of the other
Yes.
7, and then the count starts over again at 51?
Well,
so
that
yeah,
is just
People
like
have been confused
really,
by
really
this
confusing.
From the beginning.
Really
From the
confusing.
very beginning.
So I'm going to give us a pass here when we all were like, what?
what?
So, I found this interesting blog post
Okay.
called 5 Myths About Jubilee.
Okay.
Okay.
And this is written by one Dr. Art Lindsley. Now, I clicked on it. I was like, ooh, myths about Jubilee. I didn't even know there were myths about Jubilee.
Yes.
You know, like,
Yeah,
what are these myths?
5 myths debunked.
And
Sounds like something we'd write.
in reading this article, it very quickly becomes apparent that this author wants you to know that Jubilee was none of this liberal BS that the kids are spouting about off these days.
Okay.
Okay.
So, for instance, myth number 1, that Jubilee meant a forgiveness of debt. No, did not mean forgiving
No.
debt. There is no biblical basis for your student loan debt to be forgiven. Are you ridiculous?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Sounds
I
like
see. Yeah. This person owns stocks in what are those companies?
Yeah. Myth number 2, that Jubilee involves a redistribution of wealth. No. There will be no redistribution of wealth in this land or in Israel or whatever.
Redistribution.
We distribution. Yeah.
You know what I meant. A redistribution of wealth, where he's like, no, there's no biblical basis for redistributing wealth. And like his reasoning for it is kind of like, no, like the land was going back to the people who owned it originally. So like they always owned it. It was their wealth.
Okay.
It's not a redistributing of wealth.
Okay.
Myth number 3, that Jubilee shows the relative nature of private property, which is what I brought up of like, oh, this is an interesting way of handling private property.
Right.
And also of just handling the idea of owning property in general. This idea that, no, it's once you buy it, it's not yours permanently.
Yeah,
it goes back
it's
to
on
an
lease.
origin source.
Interesting.
And again, he kind of makes this argument of like, no, it's because it went back to like the original tribe. That means that their private property rights were established permanently. So,
Which I did kind of bring up of like, wait, but like this doesn't just go back to the state. It goes back to whoever owned it before. So whoever owned it at the beginning of this 50-year cycle, you own it forever.
however, what he's arguing against is the interpretation that it's like that Yahweh owns the land. No one actually owns it. That's why you need to give it back to whoever.
Yahweh did
But it's really,
that.
but like Yahweh owns it, but since my family had it before, it goes back to us.
Well, whatever. It's okay. It just means we don't need to worry about socialism because
Right.
Jubilee's not about that. Myth number 4. That
What is it about?
Myth number 4, that Jubilee leads to income equality. It does not.
I mean, we don't want that.
We do not want that. That is a
Goodness.
ridiculous concept. There's
Yeah.
no biblical basis for income equality. My goodness.
Like this paraphrasing. Of
I know.
this, blog
Dedeker
post
is
or whatever.
very indignant right now.
I don't know. It's just really fun. It was just, I was not expecting that this was going to be the
way
tone
that
of this
this
article.
Yeah, it's like,
Right.
don't you even think a thing
Is
about
all,
it.
Is all.
Goodness.
Don't you know?
Yeah, this line here where he's like, the main purpose of Jubilee seems to be not forgiveness of debt or redistribution of land or income equality, but the preservation of the prosperity and the promised land that God had promised his people. So
What does that even?
For the rich only.
the rich being able to
It doesn't-
preserve their
yeah.
wealth.
Wow, good. Yeah,
Essentially.
wow.
Cool,
How
bro.
things
Okay,
don't
hang
ever
on.
change, okay?
Yeah.
However, myth number 5, that
Yes.
Jubilee is a universally applicable principle, or that it applies to all people.
Okay.
Which technically makes sense. That's like what we were talking about earlier, where it's like this was kind of written for the Jews by the Jews. You know,
Right,
it's like
right.
the sojourners don't really get to participate in Jubilee or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think here this author's kind of making the argument of like, no, we don't need to do any kind of social welfare for immigrants. It doesn't apply to all people.
God.
That's yeah.
I see.
Wow, what
Okay.
a Debbie Downer.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
It
thought you
makes
were going to
sense.
cheer us up with some
Yeah,
Jubilee
totally.
talk here.
Well, I mean, I did go
Sorry.
down a little bit of a rabbit hole on this author, Art Lindsley, and let me tell you, whoever it is you're imagining in your head, that's exactly what he looks like.
Okay,
So
perfect.
Like Art Garfunkel, but not as fun.
not nearly as fun. Just like the whitest,
I picture him looking
oldest,
like
most evangelical man.
like J.R.R. Martin.
Oh, no
J-
beard though.
J.
Yes, it
that
is
his name?
RR. Yes.
Yes.
I was like, is it
George.
George
George
R.R. Martin.
R.R.
It's
Martin.
J.R.R. Tolkien.
J.R.R. Tolkien, and they all
George
have
R.R. Martin.
the just.
they-
Can I just
Yes, you may. Yes.
authors with the whole like bunch of initials and then a name thing over it. I'm so freaking over
Yeah,
it.
but
Like,
Jace, this is the thing.
I'm looking
that-
at you,
listen,
J.K.
Jace,
Rowling. I'm looking
Jace.
at
She
you,
doesn't have
J.R.R.
multiple
Tolkien.
Jace.
I'm looking at you, L.
Jason.
Ron Hubbard. Just stop
JK,
with the whole
listen.
letters.
Yes, the letters thing, though, is often the way that women are able to get around unconscionable bias in publishers not wanting to publish something written by
Okay,
someone who has
J.K.
his
Rowling,
first name.
you're
Yes.
off the hook.
Yes, she
But
is.
J.R.R. Tolkien and George R.R. Martin, you're still on my list.
Anyway,
Okay,
this is what this
didn't-
man looks like.
Oh,
Wow, that's not what I
goodness.
expected, actually.
No, I
Okay,
think that is
see.
exactly what I expected.
That's exactly what I
I
expected.
thought that he had maybe glasses, but he kind of looks more sinister without
Just a
them.
very white, very, very white evangelical looking man with a very intense look, very clean shaven, so no beard.
I see. Oh, is this? See, okay, interesting. So this man's more from the evangelical side of things, you think?
That's my impression from going down this kind of quick
Okay.
research.
He gives me the
Got it.
heebie-jeebies.
Definitely.
Heebie-jeebs.
All right,
Yes.
Anyway,
Jace.
it's just, yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of funny that it's like, again, this idea of Jubilee where we're like, oh, interesting. It's like,
And
you
he's like,
kinda-
not
you
interesting.
reset and like slaves, get freed. And he's
No.
like, no.
No, it's not interesting.
Fine,
No, it's
He's
not
the-
nice to anybody except for the people who are still in power. Let's please let us preserve the power that we have. Please, no,
Please.
please listen. No, this is what the Bible said.
no,
Please.
listen.
He's the
Listen to me.
definition of a party pooper.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
Jace, will you please bring us home with something a little bit more fanfare?
I will do my best. So I did some research on Shemitah, which is the Sabbath year. So this every seventh year.
Okay.
Which is
and
also-
it is the 7th year, not the 6th year, or not the 8th year.
This one's pretty clear. It's the
Okay.
seventh year.
Okay.
Jubilee, less clear. Shemitah, soup's clear.
Cool.
So it's the Sabbath year, also called the sabbatical year, which I
Oh.
think is where we get sabbatical for like professors and stuff
yeah,
from.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure that came from this.
Yeah.
So this is, it's in the Torah, like we just read, and it's still observed in contemporary Judaism as well. What's interesting about it is that over the years, the specific laws and like things within it have kind of been negotiated, and different rabbis along the way have kind of like passed certain laws to allow certain things to happen and stuff like that. So basically the gist of it today is that cultivation techniques like watering, fertilizing, weeding, all that sort of stuff may be performed as a preventative measure, but not to improve the growth of the plants.
Okay.
Additionally, any fruits or herbs that grow of their own accord where no one watches over them are considered ownerless and can be picked by anyone.
Oh,
So-
nice. Okay.
So there's lots of, then, of course, laws to govern all of that. So what was kind of interesting about this, besides the fact that this gets mentioned, this whole Sabbath year gets mentioned a lot. It was in Exodus
Okay.
that we already read.
Yeah.
In Leviticus here, it's also going to come up in the next episode. It's going to be in Deuteronomy, also in Jeremiah and Nehemiah, in Chronicles, and in Kings. So this is going to come up a bunch throughout this.
Interesting.
So here's what's kind of interesting, though, is that essentially, according to the laws, it applies to land that's owned by Jews in the land of Israel.
Okay.
That's it. Land elsewhere doesn't count, and land not owned by Jews doesn't count.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And things not grown in the land also don't count. So here's some interesting exceptions for this. Okay, so for example, stuff grown in greenhouses.
Oh.
Under some of these laws, that's exempt from this.
Wow.
Interesting.
Because it's not in the land, it's
Yes.
in pots in
Yeah.
a greenhouse.
Huh.
Hydroponics.
Oh.
They're not in land at all.
Yeah.
Which apparently hydroponics has become more and more popular recently because of this.
Wow.
Oh.
Another thing is that there was a law put into place at one point. Gosh, I'm not going to be able to find it now that I want it. But basically, there was a law put into place by a particular rabbi, basically saying that during this Sabbath year, you can sell your land just for a year to someone else. You still do all the harvesting, you still work the land, you still get the crops, and at the end of the year, you get it back from them. But they owned it, and so it wasn't owned by a Jew, so therefore the laws don't apply to it, and you can continue to harvest your land like normal.
Okay.
So it was this thing that's gotten some controversy, because some people are like, well, you're just kind of trying to circumvent this whole law.
Sure.
And I guess the the argument for it was like this was a law that was specifically put into place as sort of a stopgap measure for like when times are really tough. This is an option. This is a thing that you can do, but we don't encourage it. And the rabbi who passed this law never actually used it for himself. But like that's kind of the idea is it's like, well, if you have to, you can do this. Ideally, you don't. But there's other stuff like, so you know how in the 6th year, you're supposed to get a bunch of crops.
Sure.
And you save them up.
Yeah.
So you can still eat those crops. But one of the things, here, biur is the term for this. So under the rules of the Shemitah, produce can be stored as long as plants of that same species that are sprouting on their own are available to animals in the fields. But once that species is no longer available, like if the animals have eaten it all up, then whatever you have in storage, you have to remove it from your storage and make it ownerless and available to anyone who wants to come along and take it. However, again, the specifics of this law was that you had to put it out on the sidewalk, out on the street, and you had to tell 3 people you were not related to that it was there.
Oh my goodness.
And give them a chance to take it.
Wow.
And if they don't take it, you can then put it back in your
You're
storeroom.
just like knocking on doors, like, excuse me.
Hey,
Excuse
Yeah.
me.
you don't really want this, but I'm going to talk to you about it. I'm just going to tell you that there's a thing. It's not a very good
It's there.
Right. According
Just talking to you about it.
Yeah,
Please
yeah.
don't take it.
Please don't take this, but you
you
are
can.
entitled
You are
to it.
entitled
if
to it if you
can.
want.
Yeah.
That's funny.
The Orthodox Union describes the contemporary application as it is permissible to choose 3 people whom one knows will not claim the produce for themselves, even if they are legally entitled to.
Gracious.
Wow.
Well, all
Yeah.
right. I mean,
So-
sure. Let's do it that way.
Anyway, there's a lot of stuff. And then there was a whole thing about the debate about like when they actually fall. Does the 50 years restart the 7-year count? All of that sort of stuff. But apparently the most recent jubilee year was in 2014.
Oh.
So just recently. So we've got
some time.
the cost of property is high right
Oh,
now
yeah, we
because
gotta
you're
wait.
going to have it for a while.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Amazing.
a good time to buy if you really want it for the investment, but bad time to buy if you just want something cheap for a few years.
All right.
So,
Well, good to know.
anyway, this is fascinating. I would love if any of you know more about this stuff. We've gotten some great tweets from listeners in the past giving us more information on these things. We'd love to hear more of that, or we'd love for you to post that on our Patreon. So thanks for hanging out with us for this bonus episode, and we'll see you next week.